Welcome, team. I am so excited today because I am bringing you a story that some of you may have already read before. From rugby league player to billionaire. Can I say that again? You had a little embarrassing squirm there because I know you don't like to talk yourself up. Wes Maas. Wes, that's a fair attention-grabbing headline. From rugby league player to billionaire. I sit here and I remember the guy that I knew and met way back in the days when Brian Smith was heading up the Parramatta Eels and you were one of our younger players. You sit here today. How old are you, Wes?
44.
You sit here today, 44, a billionaire. We have to go back. I need to go all the way back, mate. I want to go back how you grew up. I want to hear about your influences in your life, any challenges you've had that may help someone, because the listeners of this show, mate, a lot of them are coaches. But honestly, when we chat off record here, I think I'm talking to a coach. So a lot of them are coaches that will love listening to you. A lot of them are leaders themselves, business people themselves. So obviously they're going to really tune in here. And myself, mate, like I'm always learning. I learn off and actually I'd love any players I've ever worked with, they know I love their stories in their life where I love seeing some are coaching, some are in business, some are doing. Your story, we never did a heap together because I was starting out in a certain part of that club, but I have watched it from afar and I know some of your good friends who tell me about you, and Jay Bandy's one who talks so highly of you, and I just love it, mate. So even me, when I'm chatting here, nothing is scripted. I'm going to learn some stuff myself, but in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, how can I help the listeners? So thank you so much, mate. Thank you so much for coming down. Can we go how you grew up, and then later in the chat we'll get to the actual business?
Yeah, no worries. So I was born in Camden and grew up in Campbelltown. Lived at a small suburb called Roos. Was a very loved the footy from a young age. I started playing footy at 6 years old. I've got two brothers. My father was a fireman and mum was a retail worker. So we were just a normal family, probably on the lower side of normal, but we didn't go without. So we definitely weren't poor. Loved footy. Played from when I was 6 years old. Played with the Campbelltown City Kangaroos, and I was quite lucky with footy. We started off with a bang, and we won our under-6 grand final, and I think that had me addicted to footy from that point forward. Yeah, we actually won 29-28, and we played against Eaglevale. I kicked the winning goal, and in the Eaglevale team was a young Eric Growth, who I actually played with later on in life, but I always remind him about that under-6 grand final.
And you still remember the score, 29-28, and you said you loved it. I mean, it sounds like you love winning there. You said you loved it. Do you remember what you loved about that sport when you first started?
I suppose I loved playing with my mates.
Yeah.
I loved the team aspect of it, and competition. I crave winning. The thrill of success is the game.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. You had that from a 6-year-old, and you were calm enough to say, "Hey, I want that goal. I want to kick the winning goal." There's something in that, mate. There's probably psychologists listening to this show that there's something in that. I'm not the expert in that area, but there is. So you fell in love with the game. You're growing up out there. When did you move to Dubbo?
When I was 11 years old. So mum and dad, Campbelltown was, had its fair share of rough pockets and bits and pieces, and Dad was working in the city in the fire brigade. So he looked at where he might be able to move our family for a better opportunity. He had a sister that lives at Bathurst, and we went for a drive and went to Bathurst, and he said, "Oh, my sister lives here, but we'll keep going and having a look a bit further." And we landed in Dubbo. We bought a block of land on the edge of town, 25 acres. I can remember Mum and Dad had $50,000, and we bought the block of land, and Dad built the house himself as an owner builder, and I think we moved there at Christmas in '91, and I can remember the house wasn't finished, so we had no floor coverings, no paint on the walls. Dad had actually done the brickwork, he'd done the frame, he'd done everything, and we moved in. So the first 2 years we had no paint on the walls, no floor coverings, nothing. But I think it was the right move for our family, and gave us a great opportunity.
And did he get you working straight away as an 11-year-old?
Look, I think we were forced to work and help him around the place.
Good.
Yeah.
Awesome. So when we would have met, you were possibly, I'm feeling like 17, 18. What happened between 11 to that time? Growing up in Dubbo. When did you come to Sydney?
I came to Sydney as a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
So from 11, I was quite lucky. Fell into a good football club at home, and we had quite a bit of success. Again, we won a few grand finals, and as a 15-year-old schoolboy, I was successful and made the New South Wales Catholics, and from that I got a small contract, basically a tracksuit contract with Parramatta, and
Who got you that? Crusher Khalil?
No, it was actually Daniel Anderson.
Oh, Daniel Anderson, yeah.
So he was a development officer at that point in time.
Yep.
And I used to come down in the school holidays and do work experience in the Parramatta footy office.
Yep.
So I did that for probably 3 years, and I used to come down and I got to know some of our team who were there for quite a while, which was Chad Robinson, Jason Kalis, Adam Wheeler. It was quite a good crew, and then I moved down after finishing year 12 as a 17-year-old.
Thoughts out to Chad's family that will no doubt be listening. What a great crew! What a great crew, mate. Even some of those names you were mentioning, they're bringing up great memories for me. Is there any? I like to think about. There's a lot of coaches listening, so. Is there any coach in Dubbo? You said you loved your time there and you had some success as well, but are there any lessons that really stuck with you as a young kid, or some stuff you were learning about team sports do you feel like reflecting back, because I have a belief it's so important who's influencing you young kids. Someone's influenced you well. Like, do you remember anything from those days?
One of my best mates at the time, his name was Paul Black, his older brother, coached us right through. His name was Graham Black, and he probably influenced those younger years. But I think I didn't think I had a future in rugby league until I made New South Wales, and then sort of that became an opportunity in rugby league.
Yeah.
And I think I was quite lucky to go to Parramatta early, and it had a great system. And I was lucky enough to make the Jet squad, which was a junior elite training squad, which was a bit of a where the 6 or 8 young fellas, 17 or 18, trained with first grade in the mornings. So I got to see what success looked like, I could see the future, as in I needed to do these, go through the system to get there. Yeah.
That Jets program, that was a brainchild of Brian Smith, who that same system has gone on to some other clubs now as well. I remember it, that exposure to those elite players, the way you put it then, and elite coaches. So you would train with the NRL coaches and the NRL players. It was like an accelerated group of players. So there's a whole club of juniorette players, but there was a little accelerated group there. Do you remember the senior players? Like, if you think the first time you trained with an NRL squad, is there something that you looked at a senior player and went, that's why he's great, I need to do that?
Maybe not a specific player, but I just looked at, the professionalism, how hard they trained, how the structure. I was lucky at the time. Parramatta had some really good senior players, with Dean Pay and Jared McCracken and Jim Dimmick, Jason Smith. Right. So those sort of senior players, I think every kid looked up to them. And I can remember I pick out Jared McCracken, how hard he used to train. He used to train exactly the way he played on a field. And I can remember up at Kellyville, we did an opposed session once, and they put, it was reserve grade versus first grade, and they put some of us young fellas in there. And I can remember, I think it was Dean Raper was the fullback for reserve grade, and he ran it back off the kickoff, and Jared McCracken picked him up and spear tackled him, and I was thinking, Christ. So, but from that point forward, he said, there's a bit of a blow up, and they said, what are you doing? And he said, you got to train like you play. So, I thought that was a bit of a thing.
Okay. Any leaders, any captains you've had that you played with back there that, when you look back, may have influenced you? Because now, I mean, you are. I feel when I talk to you, it's like talking to a coach, but you're also like talking to a captain. Like you're leading. How many staff do you lead now, by the way?
We've got about 2,500 staff.
So you lead 2,500 staff. Back then, was there any captain that was leading a group of, say, 20 or 30 men that?
Probably not a captain. I think. I think what I took away from footy was that that team. How if you've got a really aligned team with a great culture.
Yeah.
From that, we describe our culture in our business as one of commitment and care. And if you get everyone to commit and care, then you get discretionary effort, and that's where you get the elite teams.
Yeah.
I think that's in sport and business. So I think when I seen what I took away from footy was that team thing and how you needed all types of people to make a team. I think I've been lucky enough to have a few dinners and connection with Wayne Bennett, and he talks about he needs some thinkers, feelers, aggressors, and a few mozzies because we all have to laugh at someone.
Yeah.
We need to keep a bit of humour in things, and that was what I took away from sport. And with our business, we try and make everything a game and try and relate it to sport. And we used to, at the start, I felt like we were building a footy team, and then we're building a footy club, and sort of now we're building a district. But
now you're building a Premier League.
Well, it's still all the same concept. You still need all those different people in each business to make it successful.
I've kind of skipped your own, because then you did play first grade and you left the Eels and you went there, and we've gone into this business. So I might even just stay at the business bit for a bit, because what you just said, when I said it feels like I'm talking to a coach, that the coaches that have influenced me in my work, so my philosophy is to show I care. And that's to show I care in different ways, but to show what I care about as well. So like any player I work with knows, they know how much I love them diving on a loose ball, for example. So I show what I care about through what I measure, what I encourage, what I coach, what I talk about, but also caring about the actual individual themselves. And so there's many ways that I could journal at the end of the day, did I show I care today? Yep. So there's many ways I can do it. But that has been influenced by a lot of coaches who, and my upbringing, but a lot of coaches like Wayne, who, if you think about him, when any player ever talks about him, they would often refer to him almost like the father figure, or they love him, right? Because he cares. So it's interesting you mentioned Wayne has influenced a little bit of your business, because Wayne's had a big influence on my life and coaching. He cares, and he shows it in so many ways, and he loves all that stuff that you just mentioned, like. What did you talk about, the person buzzing around laughing? Did you say the
mozzie?
The mozzie? I've never heard him say that. I'm going to ask him. He even sits at the back of the bus. He goes, there's a podcast I did with Wayne where I asked him that, and I said, why do you sit at the back of the bus? Because I did do a World Cup camp with him once, and he used to, so we're in each other's company all day, every day, but he would just leave all the stuff and go to the back of the bus. And he answered it with, all you guys at the front of the bus are all stiffs, it's more fun back there. But he also There's a little bit of magic to it. He said, I don't get to know the players at the front of the bus.
Yeah.
He gets at the back because he wants to get to know them, and he has a laugh, and so. And then obviously there's his serious side when he needs to be. And you value that in your business, right?
Oh, 100%. I think like another thing we talk about in the business is all good things come through hard work. So when we interview people to work at Mars, we talk about what we want to look like, and we often talk about if you're going to come and work at Mars, we want to be a little bit like the Melbourne Storm. Like, you're not going to get a free ride. You're going to be here working really, really hard, but ultimately we'll get success, and that'll be we define success as hitting our goals, but we aspire to do a lot. So we open and upfront with everyone that comes to work with us.
Okay. You just mentioned the Mars group. We might as well stay there for a minute. So if I'm coming in for an interview at Mars right now, and I ask you a question, and I say, what does Mars Group value? What are your values? I really want to work for you. I've heard it's great. I want to work. I want a job here. But I just want to know, what do you value?
Commitment, leadership, candor, because often, things go wrong. So as leaders, we have to deal with the problems. Like, people don't come to you and tell you all the good things every day. They normally come and tell you a problem, and we think that if they stop coming to you, they've lost faith in you as a leader, or you're not trusted anymore. So, and we value trust, and care and commitment. That's how we describe.
So you've got all those values, and then you've obviously got some actions you look for that align with that. Everybody knows how important trust is. All the listeners that are listening, they're all, like I said, they're all reading the same books. You're living it. They're reading the same books on leadership. They're reading trust. Trust is the foundation for everything. How do you invest time into that as building your staff? How do you develop trust with your staff? What's your take on trust?
I think over the years I've actually got no qualifications. I've learnt everything on the run, and I say I learn with my pocket. But over the last 2 to 3 years, we have done some leadership training and learnt how to define culture, how to define your values, how to express expectations and consequences, and be upfront with everything. Because we had in Mars, in our business, over the first 15 years, I've been extremely lucky that I've kept all my key people. So I just don't lose people.
Well, there you go.
So I've had stability, and that's enabled me to run, and I can continue to build the business while they're running the day-to-day business.
Could I interrupt there? You've just answered what I feel, how you the word trust. Those people that you started with for 15 years, like, you can't buy that time. You can't buy it, but things have happened over that time that have built this foundation of trust that seems rock solid. And they would have earned each other's trust by obviously what they're capable of and how they work. That gives you reason. They would have been committed every day. They would have had work ethic. So they would have been turning up. There would be someone that turned up, gave you a first impression that I can trust this guy. So things would have happened in that 15 years that you've just answered a question in a roundabout way, that the successful sporting teams, the successful business, they do have stability. They do have people that have a rock solid level of trust. Sometimes that comes through time, because in that time as well, then there's the relationship piece. You build relationships over that time. Like there's some coaches we've mentioned and spoke about, and there's some mutual friends we have that I would trust with my life, over time.
I've learned a bit about trust, where you can be a trust giver or a trust taker. And I think as the business has grown, I need to be a trust giver, and then we talk about the inspection gap. So if that person maintains that trust, that inspection gap can widen. If they take away from the trust, the inspection gap comes tighter, and then we have to inspect more. But we always inspect. Like we have to keep honest people honest, because there's a lot of ways that you can skip, cut corners, etc. But we talk about in the business that we keep honest people honest.
Mate, I've never heard that. I've never heard that inspection gap. So the smaller it gets, you're inspecting
trust,
even harder. The less, and then eventually you just got to let it go, right?
That's it. Yeah. So you need to have the right characters in your business. With a business of 2,500 staff, obviously I don't have a personal relationship with 2,500 people, but of our top leadership team, so we've got about a 15-person leadership team. Then it goes out to about 40 with GMs, about to 80 with operations managers, and probably out to 135 where they're really our key team, and they're the culture carriers of our business, and they push that down into all their business units.
I'm trying to look. I work with, a football team each day, so it's a little smaller, but the same principles within a successful club. Culture wins, and that's a bit of a fad word, culture, but basically culture is what your values are, and then your values will drive how these people all behave, and in the footy term, you know what that's like, and then that becomes that culture. But if someone's not living that value, then I guess what you said, the trust level, and eventually if they don't fit in your culture, you can't have them. To be successful, that is, to be the best.
We describe it a little bit, how close your actions match your words.
Yeah.
And when your actions, not everyone's watching, so
yeah,
that's how we define it.
And I'm very interested in, because I tell you what's happening around the world in world sport. I went to an NBA club last year and spent some time, and I had a conversation with a great old coach who's coached for 1,000 years and full of wisdom. I loved it. His name was Ron Adams at the Golden State Warriors. And he asked me, he wasn't telling me, he just asked me, what's it like now in your sport? Like, how many coaches are there? How many staff are there? How many... Like, sometimes you could do an away trip and there's more staff than there is players, where in the old days there might have been a coach and an assistant or whatever. But in the NBA, the club he was at, he said, no, it's just how it is. It's just evolving, but I'm just observing. So the game, as it keeps evolving, there's more and more people, more and more specialists, more. But then what that does, there's all different lines of communication now. Like, there's lots of them. So managing that is interesting when you're managing 2,000 people.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge. Like, it's a challenge and an opportunity. If you say what's our biggest opportunity and what's our biggest risk, is to harness and enhance our culture. The more we can push our culture into the business, the better the business will go over time. But it's also a risk. If we don't harness and enhance our culture, if we lose our way, it can go exactly the other way.
Mate, I am loving this chat. Have you ever listened to the Ivan Cleary episode on here?
No.
I'm going to send it to you because, he's going through a lot of success at the moment at a club that, you know Matt Cameron well, and who's heading that up, and they're at a club going through a lot of success. But I feel and you mentioned the Melbourne Storms before. I know with the Roosters, we meant, your good mates at the Roosters there with Trent Robinson, who I'm currently working with, and Daniel Anderson. So you know these successful clubs. You've mentioned Wayne Bennett in our chats here. So all of those ones invest in their culture. And that's what sustained success looks like. Now, let's go back to your business. 20 years? Is it 20 years now?
Yeah, it's 22 years this year.
22 years of sustained success. And you have just said it, you invest. How did you word that then around investing in your culture? What did you say?
I mean, we do a lot. We talk about culture.
Yeah, right.
I think if you were, as the business has grown, we've became much more mature in our approach to our business and our people and our leadership and our training. But I would say really in the last 5 years, the business has it's grown 3 or 4 times in the last 5 years. So to enable that, we had to educate ourselves, and really it was more about educating ourselves on how we can teach more people in the business, because the business couldn't keep growing with just that one line of leaders. Where today the business has a really big leadership team, and they're able to push everything down into the business units.
Can I just remind the listeners, you started, or actually, I won't remind them, they could read the stories themselves, but I'll ask you, I know how it started. Can we go there? So it's now valued at, what's it valued at now? Is it?
The business is, it's a $1.5 billion business.
Yeah, $1.5 billion business. Can we go? It's hard to even comprehend that. I bet you never, did you ever think that?
No, not at the beginning.
Yeah.
But today the business has grown 31% compound annual growth for 22 years, and over the last 5 years 34%. But that's been it's by design, So it's not it's nothing radical. It's just the design. So we've got a really strong business plan. And we're compounding capital. So, and another thing I relate that to football or training is, you compound your training sessions. So if you're doing your reps, you do them every day, they all add up. It's exactly the same with business, I believe.
Yeah.
We're compounding capital, but we're also compounding efforts, and we break our strategy down. We build a 1, 2, 3, 5 year strategy. But then in the 1 year strategy, we break it down even further to 3, 6, 9 months, and then 30, 60, 90 day sprints. And then we review our business every quarter. We look at the quarter that was and the quarter going forward, and we put 5 big rocks into each. And normally they're problems or things that must happen to hit our goals.
Can we go to how it started?
How it started.
Can you tell me, you retired, you're a professional rugby league player, you played a couple of first grade games, you left the Eels, which is a story that I know you've revisited with Brian, great memories of those days. You left the Eels because your dad said, take the money, son, because there was more offer somewhere else. You told me you wish you stayed, but anyway, you took the money. But then you retired very early. You retired at 22 to start a business. What was the first thing you did to start a business?
If I go back into the footy, when I left Parramatta as a 19-year-old and went to the West Tigers, which was a start-up club, and not a stable organisation at that point in time. And I could see this massive difference from a really stable Parramatta at the time. There was really strong, had good leadership. Brian had built a great system, and it had the jet squads, and so they had a lot of success and a lot of young players coming through. And then to go to a new system, not anything against those people and everything at the West Tigers, but it was like a startup. So I think that was it was polar opposite from where I'd come from at Para, and to couple that, after the first 6 weeks, I had a shoulder reconstruction. So I had nearly 18 months on the sideline, and then came back at the end of the next year, quite disgruntled, and I'd worked the whole time. So I think everything happens for a reason. The benefit of getting injured was I spent more time at work, and I learnt all about the hire game. So I started off as a yardie and a truck driver, and then as I got injured, I moved into the office and learned about return on capital, really, but I also ran transport and ran all the different components of the business. So, in hindsight, that was a great thing.
Yeah.
But I actually remember when I had my shoulder. You talk about footy players and kids, and when I was playing footy, the only thing that I cared about was being able to play first grade. That was nothing else mattered. and I remember having the operation, and I remember the doctor's name. It was Dr. Des Bocker.
Yeah.
And I remember waking up in the theatre, and the only thing I said to the doctor was, "Can I play first grade?" That was the only thing I said. He said, "Mate, don't worry about first grade. Just worry about your shoulder." And I was so determined that, and I think that would be similar to many young players. Like you just don't have anything else in your mindset except for playing footy.
Yeah.
And obviously there was a lot of disappointment and psychological challenge. Or mental challenge, when you're getting over a big injury. But, in hindsight down the track, you learn, and it wasn't actually that important at the time. So anyway, I got over that, and I had 6 months at Souths in 2002, which was a startup.
Yep.
So probably wasn't as it's a professional organisation today. So no disrespect to Souths, but at the time, again, it was a startup. So the organisation wasn't strong and secure, and didn't have all the systems, process, and etc. So
yeah,
wasn't having a great time. I probably worked out I wasn't going to be good enough, or definitely wasn't going to be in the upper 20 or 30%. I'd be in the bottom end of the game, and as I said, quite disgruntled. So I pulled the pin just before June 30, and I actually went and had 6 months with my mates at Belrose, and I had about 5 or 6 Dubbo mates there, and we won a comp over there. And then I moved home, flew home on September 11, which was 1 year after,
yep.
1 or 2 years after the September 11s. I always remember when I flew home.
Yep.
And I bought a Bobcat. I had 14,000 in the bank, and that's what the Bobcat cost me. And a business partner of mine today, he was actually at the auction, and I could have bought it for 9,000, but he bidded me up to 14, and that was all I had. And I borrowed 25 and bought a truck, and started just plan hire. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Well, no, it's not unbelievable. It's very believable, because all the things you said. I mean, we even skipped past. I mean, you started winning grand finals at 6 years old. You won them in Dubbo, then you won, I remember, a reserve grade Parry. You had a good team and good coaching and that. You won grand finals there, and you just said you won another one with your mates. Like, I've got a feeling if you hung around, I mean, you played yourself down. You did play NRL. You achieved that dream. You played NRL. Who did you debut against? Was it Broncos? Or
Debuted against the Broncos.
Debuted against the Broncos. So you achieved that dream. I've got a feeling what's inside you would have come out eventually as an elite player, but it turns out you took the right path as far as what you built after buying a $14,000 Bobcat. And then you're telling me that it's growing every year. So are you seeing, like, what do you see as possible now? Like, obviously you didn't originally think this is a $1.5 billion business, but somewhere down the track you said, yeah, I can see that. And you've worked out how to get there. There's something in that mind of yours that sets your standards pretty high, because that kind of growth every year, is it going to keep growing like this?
Yeah, I believe it will, because I believe the past is just a picture of the future. So if we don't change anything, if we continue doing what we're doing, that's the only thing it can do. It can't do anything else, because we are, our one and only metric that we care about is return on capital. So as long as we invest, we're an asset-backed business, so we invest in assets, and then we drive a return out of those assets, and then we couple that with our culture and our operating system, and from that we get what we believe, that there's only two types of business. You're either a low-cost model, or you're a technology or something scientific. Everything we're doing is not that scientific. It's pretty, a lot of people are doing it. We're just aiming to do it better. So again, if you use an analogy about a footy club, there's plenty of footy clubs doing the same thing. It's just that a few of them obviously do it a lot better than others, because they get the culture right. They get the alignment of all their club. They got really stable board, really stable all the way through, and then they can ride. There's always going to be challenges, but they can ride through those cycles and push through the other side.
You mentioned challenges. Have you had any that are worth sharing?
I've definitely had a few challenges along the way, and we set some rules about 10 years ago that we sort of lost our way a little bit. So the business grew in phases. So if I talk about the phases, and then I can share with some of the challenges.
Yeah.
When we kicked off with the Bobcat, I think the first 2.5 years was just run hard. Go as hard as we can, earn as much as we can. We didn't really have a plan. When I say we, it was just me. So I brought a few people on, and over that first 5 years, we went from 1 machine to 40 machines, 40 odd blokes. So by 2007, we were building small scale civil works. We'd ventured north of Dubbo. I don't know why, but we ended up at the Gold Coast. We built a $10 million sewage treatment plant, and so I was 27. I had a few of my mates in the business. I probably broke all the rules, where I've got a lot of my best mates and my best friends work with me.
That's
and even if they weren't my best mate, they are now. I love all me people.
Yeah.
So we got to the Gold Coast, and we were probably stretched from a project management sense and a project management maturity. But we wanted to continue to grow, and we sat down and workshopped how we're going to continue to grow. But we wanted to grow with control on risk as well. So we said, well, we think we come from higher. I had a few blokes that had come out of the coach system, and we said we'll grow a material plant hire business. And then from 2007 to 2012, we went from 40 machines to 400 machines. We were running quite hard. We grew with our clients. Our clients were your typical infrastructure clients, so your Abbey Group, Thies, Leightons, and all of those clients became building some of the largest gas projects and coal projects, and we just expanded with them. Then I think the next 2 years or 3 years, from 2012 to 2014, was a little bit, I say the little glory years. So there was a lot of multi-billion-dollar projects that we were working on, and we were running at really high utilisation, like probably up to 90%. And then we could see that some of those projects were going to come off. In about 2014, I sold a third of our plant and equipment, and we diversified. And the initial reason for diversification and security was I had many key people that had worked away for me for 5 or 10 years, and I wanted to bring them home. So I bought a quarry, I bought a residential property, or a land subdivision, and I bought into an underground business, which was a service business. And we said, right, we're going to be a bit conservative and just have a stable base and bring all those people home. And that lasted about 6 months. And then in the next 5 years, we grew 10 times. And that got us to about 2019. And we acquired a few more quarries. So we had about 4 quarries at that stage. And then we started running out of money. When I say running out of money, we weren't running out of money from an operational sense, but we had a lot of opportunities that we wanted to take, and we didn't have enough capital to do those. So we looked at our opportunities, and that was take a partner on, whether it was private or public equity, or private equity, or publicly list. And ultimately, option 1 and 2 would have publicly listed, and we said, oh, well, it was definitely within us that we said, if they can do it, we can do it.
Yeah.
Let's just work it out. And we went on an 18-month journey to get IPO ready or public company ready. And then we launched our IPO on the 28th of February 2020. And we had a big gala dinner in Dubbo. We actually had Wayne out as a keynote speaker.
Yeah.
And he spoke at that dinner there for nearly an hour, and you could have heard a pin drop in the place.
He's brilliant.
He had 100% of the crowd. It was absolutely amazing. And then 2 weeks later, we all got sent home when COVID was announced.
Yes.
So it was a failed attempt of listing. And I can remember I live out of town on the river, and sitting on the river and go, I can't believe I just wasted 18 months of my life to get that done. But anyway, the world worked itself out, and
Yeah.
everything came good. And 6 months later, we listed. So we listed on the 4th of December 2020. After that fair journey, and I say everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
I feel the reason that, for me, the positive out of that false start was that everything that we told our funds or the investors that were going to invest in Mars, we did.
Yeah.
So it gave us a lot of credibility between that February date and the December date. It was a successful IPO, and we listed at $2, and on day one it went to $2.70. So
Yeah.
that was quite a happy day.
One Bobcat to now. Could you just quickly tell me what divisions of your business there are? Like you've mentioned some property development there. Explain to me, like I haven't looked into it enough. I should have done more homework. Explain to me how big this is. I know of your daily passion and love of helping people and helping the rugby league community and helping people of Dubbo. I hear all of those type of stories through mutual friends, but I don't follow the stock exchange, for example, and I'm intrigued. You are blowing my mind here. What other divisions are there?
We've got 5 divisions.
Yep.
Construction materials is our number one division, the biggest contributor to our group today. That's made up of quarries, concrete, asphalt sealing, precast, and transport. That group, is about a $500 million turnover business, 700 odd staff, and spreads from the bottom of Victoria to the top of Queensland. So it's an East Coast business. It's grown at about 46% compound annual growth over the last 5 years. So, and we have that's by design. It's not by chance. We've invested a significant amount of capital into that business, and we've put a lot of money into our plant and equipment and our culture and training, and from that we get a lower cost of production, and we can compete in the market. So that's our number one division. Number two division is civil construction and hire. That's where the business was founded. It's primarily a plant hire business, but it does have a civil component where it's a hard dollar contracting, building roads, dams, rail, and the like. And we have an electrical business that does transmission, distribution, switchboards, and substations. It's roughly a third, but the biggest earnings contributor there is plant hire. And we have about 1,100 assets. And again, it spreads all across the east coast of Australia, from the bottom of Vic to the top of Queensland. We've got a residential property business, primarily a land development business, but we do build homes. We do cabinetry. So we've got about 8,000 lots in our portfolio across 9 locations. So our primary locations are Dubbo, Tamworth, Rockhampton, and then we've got a scattering of another 2,000 lots across Lithgow, Bathurst, Orange, Mudgee, and Griffith. That business is probably one of the least mature, so it's infant in its delivery, but maturity, it will deliver about 500 or 600 lots a year, 500 or 600 homes a year for the next 15 years. So quite a runway.
And when you're building all those, that correct me if I'm wrong, that division are using all the products from this division. So you basically do all the work. Is that how you call it?
Vertically integrated.
Yeah. Wow.
Our residential business is the most integration or pull through from our other parts of the business. And our commercial division, we do industrial, self-storage, childcare. We've recently partnered with National Self-Storage, which is the largest operator in Australia. So we develop for them, and either through JV or buyouts. But yeah, it's a very strong, stable business. We do a bit of external construction, but primarily we would say that we're commercial developers rather than external construction company. And our last division, which is quite small but exciting opportunity, we've got a manufacturing division where we manufacture in Vietnam. So we've got I've got a factory in Vietnam, 20,000 metres under roof, and I've got 250 staff in Vietnam, and we distribute into Australia, Indonesia, South America, Europe, and the USA.
Okay.
But it's quite small in in comparison to other parts of the group.
So what, mate, you must, so when you're saying you have a 5-year, like what do you see? Like what's possible for Maas Group? Like how big does this get? What do you see possible? What do you want to happen?
I don't have an end game, so I'm in a sustainable, happy. I enjoy the thrill of the game. So whatever I have the support of the team, that gives me the confidence to continue to grow the business. Typically, we're growing the business 50% organic, so 50% through our operating systems, our people, and expanding any one of those business units, and then 50% through acquisition. So we have been growing quite aggressive, but that's my nature, and that's what I'll always do. So
that was the how you started, just the hit it up phase, the run hard phase. That's in your nature, and you love working. Even at the start of the chat, you talked about your parents, how hard they worked, and it just seems you love working. You love the thrill of it. On the side of that, what other interests do you have? I mean, your boys are going good with their rugby league themselves. Your daughter, what was she playing? She's playing tag or touch or?
Yeah, I've got 4 children.
4 children,
Been married for 20 years. So I've had a very stable and supportive wife, which has obviously also allowed me to
because you must
do
be
what
a
I do with
workaholic.
work.
Are you home at all?
Yeah.
Shout out to your wife right now.
I travel sort of 2 or 3 days a week at least.
Okay.
But I'm generally home on Fridays through the weekend, and generally home on Mondays. I've got 4 kids. They're all very active.
Yeah.
So 2 boys, 2 girls. They're into lots of sport, and also into their school. I run the water for both the boys, supportive with the girls with their netball and league tag.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Because that I do hear you do a lot supporting junior sport and that, because that'll never leave you, that love, will it?
No, I'm an extremely passionate person. I suppose it comes through in winning and the challenge and the game. Look, it's my time out when I get to run the water for the boys on the weekend. You don't have your phone, and obviously my phone runs pretty hot.
Yeah.
That's my time out. I can just concentrate on them, and I love it.
Awesome, mate. Awesome. Mate, honestly, I could talk to you all day. We probably won't, because you've got $1 billion business to go and run, but even just your time to share. I must emphasize again, when I started doing this podcast, it was all about how can I help someone through guests like you. How can I help someone else? It's in the logo, it's in the handshake. That handshake's like the team environment you've always been in, and the best teammates are like, how can I help someone else? So that's how this started. I never intended it to get as big as some of the guests that I've had on the show, but all of them come in here with a genuine and real authentic way of sharing their story that helps. Like, there's some stuff that you said there, mate, that I'll take, and I know there is stuff that the listeners will take. And it's been great catching up with you again anyway.
No, thank you.
Thanks, mate.
I've loved the journey. It's I've obviously been very, very lucky to have surround myself with great people and access to great people, and my team is amazing. I wouldn't be able to do what I do without my team.
Yeah, mate, you mentioned your love of your team there before. That's straight away I started thinking of the best coaches I've ever worked with. And, we caught up with one today that you can just see the the love he even had of you when he bumped into you. You know, like when you think of those coaches, you think of the Wayne Bennett's, the Trent Robinsons. We mentioned Brian Smith, who had a big influence on yourself. Like, yeah, I just thought of those people, you know, and then I even thought of leaders. Like, if you see the love Nick Politis has in his people, in his club and his people, and then you think of the culture he's set, and it's sustainable, right?
Yeah.
And you know, we mentioned the Ivan Clearys and the Matt Camerons, like it's, yeah. And then you just said it so naturally before, the love of your workers, the love of the trust. There's some magic in that, mate. And yeah, honestly, I thank you again.